Hi, and welcome to the Math Together show, where thoughtful math educators gather and learn together. I'm Molly Vokey.
I'm Dr. Suluni.
I'm Heidi Subnani. We're happy to have you here today.
Yeah, welcome. We are here to talk to Christina Lincoln Moore about how do you take care of the social emotional health of your students in a time of uncertainty. But before we do that, we'd like to talk about some of the things that are going on with us in the Math Together learning community.
So if you're here now, if you would hit like and say hello and tell us where you are, that would be fantastic. And we're going to have a raffle today. So the more you're participating, the more your name will be entered into a raffle. And we're going to be raffling off a free month of a membership to the Math Together learning community. So please make sure to do that. Ask questions. You are in for such a treat to be spending some time here with Christina. And so be sure to take advantage of this time and ask your questions. I think those are the things that I want to remind you of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so keep in mind, this additional free month that we're raffling is in addition to the free month you get when you join the Math Together community. This is a space that we really want to be supporting each other in. We found that we have not seen each other, all three of us, in person since March, I think, 13, when we realized that everything was coming to a halt really rapidly. And we're used to being together as a team. And we were thinking, how do we provide that same support to teachers? How do we provide a community where they can learn together, that we can provide professional development that is specific to whatever it is you are currently interested in? And so this space is really made for that, and we are here to support you and to really learn together, and that's where all of this is coming from. So we have a couple people. Hello, Annalise and Garrett. Nice to see you, some of our regular listeners. We're so excited to have Christina Lincoln Moore here with us today, and she is, I'm sure, going to have so many things that keep your mind thinking as we go forward. Every time I have an opportunity to listen to her speak or read something that she recommends, my mind is just going on for many, many days about it. So we want to give you an opportunity to continue that conversation with us in a virtual coffee chat where if you hear something today that Christina is thinking about, and you want to talk that out a bit more with one of the three of us in a space where it's just one-on-one, and how would this apply to my situation, my school, my classroom, so that I can implement the things that she's talking about, we're here to do that with you. So you can sign up at looneymath.com for a Shape Your Future chat, and we will set that up and help you get moving on that. So that's just one of those ways that we are here to support you. That's a free call with us. You get a free month of Math Together, and then ongoing new content every month. April. August is coming.
We'll revisit this. So we'll revisit this at the end of the show, but we're excited to bring in Christina. So just keep in mind that you don't have to be sitting out there worried and planning and running in circles by yourself. If you are, definitely do reach out.
Yeah, for sure.
And I get to introduce Christina Lincoln Moore, who is an innovative educational leader who is tenacious and profoundly dedicated to mindful project-based learning to engender formidable mathematics identities. She taught for LAUSD and is currently an assistant principal. Christina presents as a featured speaker nationally, focusing on equity and access of African Americans to algebra and the integration of social emotional learning into mathematics instruction. Christina serves as the state secretary for the California Mathematics Council and equity, access, and empowerment chairperson of the California Mathematics Council Southern Section. She is a co-author of NCSM Essential Actions Framework for Leadership in Mathematics Education and the founder of Talk Number to Me Consulting. So I am going to bring Christina into the studio.
Excited.
Oh, whoops, sorry.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Christina. We are so delighted to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and thank you to all the listeners being here.
Yay.
I get to kick us off with our first question, but when you agreed to come on, I want to tell a story. I was able to hear you speak on more than one occasion, and then after, all these people were getting in line, and I was like, what's going on? I better get in line, right? So I got in line too, and you were giving out hugs, and I was like, oh my gosh. And it was such a beautiful moment of embracing each other, but also everything that you had just spoken about, which is the critical nature of social and emotional learning. So I just want you to know that. And I've always been so touched and impacted by your messages. But before we dig into that, we'd like to start with this question. What is your why? You said in your NCSM talk that you play in the deep end of the pool. So I know you have deep thoughts to share. So maybe you could talk to us about why you do what you do, how you get started and landed here today.
Well, bold leaders are not afraid to tackle tough issues. So when I say I'm in the deep end of the pool, that's what I do. And I'm not always liked for that, but you have to address those issues because, in remembrance of John Lewis, our congressman we lost, he was tenacious and compassionate, and he lived in his values. And I seek to do that every day. But as it regards to what is my why, I would definitely say I remember being that student in trig class and then dropping that class because it felt like I was dumb. I felt like everyone was speaking a different language that everyone else understood, and it was only me. And being, a high achieving, fixed mindset young woman, I had to drop that class as I needed to preserve my GPA. And when I decided to become a teacher, I said I would never, ever let a student of mine feel that way. And through my journey, I was in the classroom for 17 and a half years, and that's what I sought to do. So I only came out of the classroom because Common Core came and I became a Common Core math coach. And the only reason I came out because I had already been teaching in the way of Common Core and I felt like I had something to share. And, that has really been my motivation for my different moves. It hasn't been because I want to be promoted. It's because I have something, I think to share that will help other students who are sitting in that seat feeling that they're not valued. So I would definitely say that is my why. And I would like to read a quote from Francis Sue's book, Mathematics for Human Flourishing. It is, I have a lot of favorite books, but this is becoming quickly my favorite. This is the love chapter. You cannot separate the proper practice of mathematics from what it means to be human. For you love another human being when you honor them as a dignified mathematical thinker and believe in their potential to realize their mathematical brilliance. So Francis Sue says, I cannot separate math and being human. So my job as a mathematics advocate is that we put on that lens, that if I see you as a human being, complex and a whole human being, that you have the potential to be mathematically brilliant. So if I think of it that way, all of my other decisions will fall from that.
This is such a beautiful quote to bring out, Christina. And I feel like people think about mathematics as sort of this cold logic. We've got this stereotype, and it's actually deeply human, and we're deeply connected in mathematical ideas. And to be seen for that brilliance, what a beautiful quote to have shared. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Lovely. All right.
So
I think
one
we're
of the
gonna-
things, oh, sorry.
I think we're going to back that question up to
Yeah.
the one before.
Oh, sorry. Went too quick. Fast forwarding. All right.
So we want to think about like our big question. And that is, how do we care for the social health and emotional health of students in times of uncertainty? And I think for us, we've never had a more uncertain time.
Yeah.
Like as a country, I think there have been pockets of places where there's been similar uncertainty, but nothing like this on quite the scale that we are experiencing. And so what are your thoughts around that? You are already working in this space, so this is social and emotional health and mathematics, but what do we do now?
Well, well, first, I'd like to say that when we talk about social emotional learning and mental health, it's for all of our stakeholders, our students, our teachers, our parents, our staff, our administrators, it's everyone. And when you are what I call a mindful leader, you're taking all of that into account, and it facilitates all of the actions that you take. So when I think of the social emotional learning, that I'm very passionate about that because of what I said, my why. When I was in the classroom, my discipline system was based on the book by Carol McLeod, Have You Filled a Bucket Today? And that book states that everyone, it's a children's book, that everyone holds a bucket that has all the thoughts and feelings that they have about themselves. And that we are bucket fillers, not bucket dippers. So that is the way I try to live my life. I know I dip sometimes, but that's what my goal is. And that was what I set in the classroom. And social emotional learning is not about, we're going to do this lesson on Friday. It's about the culture that you set, the culture and the climate that you set. The culture is all the procedures and things that you do, but the climate is how children feel. So when we think about those things, we have to be cognizant of that when we make all of our decisions. So how I choose groups, how I call roll, all of those things come from that. And when we think about that, these children are very delicate. They may have bad behavior or whatever it is, but those little souls are very delicate. And we are instrumental in building up who they are. And one of my things about essential to social emotional learning is building your mathematics identity. Your mathematics identity is just as correlated as your race, your gender, your religion. How I felt about myself when I was sitting in that trig class, that determined, well, maybe I shouldn't pick that major because I made decisions based on how I felt about my mathematical self. And it has taken me years to develop who I am and struggling with imposter syndrome. Like, I don't have a right to be in this space. But, and especially as a woman of color, as a mom, all of the identities that I have, but I have to constantly build up my mathematical identity. Teachers have to build up their identities as well as we're building up our students. And how we do that is through social emotional learning competencies. The catchphrase now is, growth mindset, which I completely agree with. But how do you get that? Those are social emotional learning competencies. And stress resilience, self-awareness, having self-efficacy, the belief that you can do it, how to regulate your emotions. How do you have healthy relationships? How do I talk and listen? How can I take it when you disagree with me? And I might be, all of my feelings are on edge. I could have lost a loved one to the coronavirus, or I have experienced the trauma of seeing someone murdered brutally by the forces that be. So So we are always, we're human, as Francis Sue says. So we're always having these feelings, and we have to give our students the tools to deal with it. And when I speak, I always talk about the integration of the standards for mathematical practice with social emotional learning competencies. And I just wanted to share, there's numerous studies about this, but the one that I really love was carried out by Dr. Robert Berry, who's the immediate past president of NCTM. And they studied over 3,000 third graders. They split them. Half had a math coach and half had a math coach and a cell coach. And the group that had the social emotional learning coach, they did far better. This has been duplicated in all grade levels with different studies. Harvard just published one the summer of 2019. So we know, because remember, we are all human and we all have these feelings about ourselves. We have to integrate those things so we can see that they are mathematically brilliant and that they can see it in themselves.
That reminds me. No, go ahead, Sue.
Okay. I was taking notes as you were talking, and there are a number of things, but what I'm thinking about, because I've heard you speak on numerous occasions, is so how do we do that, right? Like teachers, when we talk about their emotional health as well.
Yes.
So they're full, right, and of stress or whatever, but how do we education around those social and emotional competencies? Because I think we say these words and then we just say teachers go and do, and then
right.
It's definitely much harder to do.
Definitely. And it's hard for me to do. And I've been trained extensively in it. So it's an ongoing, because we are human. What I would say is it has to become a part of your self-care regimen. Well, first you have to establish a self-care regimen that you take some time to whatever it is that brings you calm and peace for you to reflect. When I introduced this to my school, I said, this is for your personal practice. This is not for you to do with your students. The program that I introduced is called Dynamic Mindfulness by the Niagara Institute. But there are many, responsive classroom, panorama. I mean, there's lots of different programs. There's lots of different apps, the Calm app, Headspace, all these different things. But the reason that I love dynamic mindfulness so much is because the first element is stress resilience. And we know by brain research that we have to address that first before we can be calm enough to make good decisions, to hear others, to develop those executive functioning skills. So for example, some of the things that I did as a classroom to build the mathematical identity of my students, I filmed them doing math, and it was on my class website for parents to access. Having strategy walls. When we did number strings, our number string practice every morning, they are published mathematicians. Well, first of all, let's take it back. I told them they didn't know it was a standards for mathematical practice, but I said, this is just what mathematicians do. We are listeners. We persevere. We can ask questions. So they accepted it. They said, okay, this is what mathematicians do. Okay, we're mathematicians. It was like, that was just what we are. Because I always was speaking into them. You are a writer. You are a scientist. I was telling them who they were, and they followed suit. And they were a little arrogant with it, but I loved it because they didn't see themselves from a deficit lens. And I really would challenge people who would say things that would say, like, I wouldn't say the EL, I say emergent bilingual, because why is English the the greatest language in the world. That's saying that English is here and your language is here. So why is that? How about emerging bilingual? But
Absolutely.
we so having those mathematical practices in place, when we do our strategy work with those number strings, I'm publishing what they say. I'm always throwing things back to the class. I wasn't the person who knew everything. We always threw it back to the class. And if a student said something, raised their hand, didn't say something correct, I would say, may I have permission to have someone add on to your thinking? Remember, it's always going back to my why, how you feel when you're sitting in the seat. So then they've given me permission and they feel good. It's not like, oh, you got it wrong. Someone else, and then what does that make that child feel? And in the realm that we are in, and right now, when everything is so precarious, we really, really have to take the feelings of our students and building those relationships in account. One of the things that I would tell my teachers is those first few weeks, we really have to develop relationships. It's not so much about the assessments. I remember when I was, starting out, you're told you have to do all your diagnostic assessments, and then you give them a packet of busy work, and you got to pull kids and do all this stuff. And then it was like setting the tone for the year. And that's not going to get it right now, especially in the environment that we're in. It has to be, I care about you. One of the things I was so impressed about John Lewis's funeral, everyone said how much he loved them, how he made you feel valued, how it was all of them were talking about the feeling that they had when they were with him. And that's what's going to determine. I wrote an article for NCSM about remote learning, and I said, now that our schools are these systems of control, but now that we don't have control, what is going to determine if a child shows up to your Zoom? It's the relationship that you established before you left. So it's definitely all about the relationships that you establish with your students, esteeming them as that full, whole human being.
Christina, one thing that you said really struck me, and it's not like I've never thought about this before, but it's a lens that I can, a question I can ask myself 100 times a day. How is the student feeling right now? And what am I going to say to that student to make them feel good? It's not rocket science really, but for me, I guess I think of that like as a whole and about building relationships. And I've thought about that part a lot, but the individual moments of how you impact a student is so something to think about. And I think many teachers, speak and harm students without really meaning to, because they haven't really thought about their response to that student.
And it's everything. It's not just the words you say, it's the look you give, it's your size, it's a lot of microaggressions that happen. When I walk into the room in different spaces, I know what's going on. I know if I am welcomed in the space. I know without anyone saying anything to me. One of the things I ask my teachers, please greet your students warmly when they come in. I mean, that's just something basic. If you're just at the board already and they're coming, okay, we're gonna, it's not like, hey, how you doing? Have some kind of like call and response thing. Okay, and then we get to it, but those and especially with because my school is K-8 and you have going to all the classes, you don't know what happened in passing period, you don't know, so to have those routines that really help students transition so that they can really focus on the math, because I said it all the time when I was in trainings, you spend time to save time. You put in that work at the beginning, you're not going to have issues later. because everyone is invested. They know who you are. They know you care for them. You're not going to let them fail. And we do. And here's another thing about social emotional learning. Social emotional learning is not to beat in compliance. Oh, we're going to do this lesson about listening and it's not about compliance. Because I am not one for the school prison pipeline. It's not about compliance.
Mm-hmm.
It's about children developing self-awareness so that they can make these decisions on their own, these life skills. I'm pursuing my doctorate degree, and one of my classes this summer was on standard-based grading. Oh my gosh, I love I loved it. I just ate it all up, and I'm looking forward to learning so much more about it because I saw how it feeds into the social emotional learning competencies. Because I always had a problem with how we grade, that we say you have a growth mindset, but then I give you this grade. It's like
Mm-hmm.
how do we, reconcile our policies with what we're saying?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think what we have now is an opportunity to change some of that
Yes.
because it can't be business as usual.
Yes.
And instead of
Mhm.
it's all about the relationships. Like if we learn nothing from this pandemic, you
Yes.
know, relationships,
Right.
and we
Mhm.
can't contradict ourselves by this assessment deficit mindset grading situation. We've got
Right.
to work together and make those connections. So I love all the stuff you're sharing. Maybe we can talk about the piece of within a distance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, one of the questions that we had for you, given where we are right now, and particularly approaching August, where many schools are starting,
Mhm.
do you have suggestions for social emotional learning while you're teaching from a distance?
I do. And if you could pull up that graphic for me, I'd
Okay.
love to share it with you.
I'm going to work on that while you're chatting.
So I think, and I got this from my son's school, and I'm just so excited about it. I'm going to use it forever. And because it speaks so much to what I believe in. And you see that it's a triangle, which is my
Mhm.
favorite shape, because we know that the triangle is the strongest shape. And the first prong is strong relationships and classroom community. And I've already spoke a bit about that already. To me, the key, face-to-face, hybrid, exclusively remote, is always about the relationships. But let's talk about the second part, which is explicit executive functioning skills coaching. What are executive skills? That we were talking earlier about young people going to coronavirus parties. That's the lack of executive functioning
Yes, in play.
skills.
Yeah.
So we know how important it is that you are able to prioritize tasks. Do you remember what you have mental flexibility? To do mathematics well, you have to have mental flexibility. How to manage your time, how to manage your emotions, how to switch from one task to the other, like the middle school going from one class to the all of those things are executive functioning skills, and teachers do a good job of having all of our routines and so that we can help our students with that, but we also want it peppered in with that love and kindness and compassion to build up who they are. And then of course the differentiated teaching. One of my greatest concerns during this time is how we're meeting the needs of our students with special needs, our emergent bilingual. I don't have the answer of how we best meet those needs, but as I go back to school, Actually, I start again on Monday. We're going to hash out a plan so that we can be as inclusive as possible, looking at the data, seeing how we can utilize our staff, our classified staff, to pull groups. I mean, we really have to put in an enormous amount of effort to make this happen. But I think if you have this three-pronged approach, where you establish the relationships, establish your check-ins. How are we feeling today? And they can put it in the chat, or they have a something. Having a wellness Wednesday where you focus on mindfulness, um, uh, uh, bonding activities, sharing of art. It's all of those things. That's practicing those executive functioning skills. So I never say, people might say, well, I don't have time for it. But again, you spend time to save time. And if you establish that at the beginning, I think that will be very helpful to you in the end. I can't tell you the stories. One of our stories, I had a parent at the end of last year, student very troubled, and um, extremely troubled. And I had a routine with this student. We would play Blink. And that's how I was able to get the student to calm down. And the parent emailed me, because we were now in a remote situation. And she was so excited to tell me that she played Blink with her child, because she was able to have that thing, like that was our thing, that I could always, because he wanted to beat me. So and then she was so excited to share that with me. So when we're talking about all of our stakeholders having, one of the things that I suggest is having a time for your parents, just your parents. Not let it turn into a gripe session, but it be a session where parents can just talk, whatever their questions are, and then let's have some mindfulness. People want to be seen and heard, period. That is our number one. We want to know that someone values us. So when we say, even if nobody comes, but if you have some office hours, it's like, this is our parent time. It's our, whatever you want to call it. And even if nobody shows up, just the fact that you have this special designated time just for them, that's communicating that I value you. Our parents are, for some of them, they're struggling. They're like, oh my God, what is all this? And I see our parent relationship. One is they get to see the wonderful lessons that you are doing, and they can embrace it. But also how we can work together to achieve our goals of investing into our children. So I think these three keys would help you to be successful in this remote learning situation. Love is the key. Love is the key.
It is every time.
Well, I think that flexibility too, that was an equilateral, like there are equal amounts of all of those things. And so it's not like one is taking precedent over the other. And I think sometimes that might be something that we do as content area, like, okay, right now is the time for this content. And so I'm going to spend time in that. And we miss those opportunities for connection, for working on other areas of our brain, for making tie into all of those executive function things. And it's super challenging. I mean, it's no one's saying that this work is easy, but I think of all the times, this is the time to let some content things go and to pick up more in the caring for ourselves, seeing others, acknowledging systemic issues that have been there.
Yes.
Now is that time. If we don't do it now, we're going to miss another huge opportunity.
Now is definitely the time. And I've always told teachers anyway, You know, it's okay sometimes to go down that rabbit hole. Sometimes you have some of the best conversations that are off topic, but it's something that students are excited about. So let's do it. But right now, our nation is looking at itself. Unfortunately, because of the death of George Floyd, and there was nothing else going on, no sports and all these other things that would distract us. America is taking a look at itself, and our children are feeling it. Students of color carry either vicarious trauma from witnessing, knowing all. I mean, I can't even tell you how many images I have seen of lynchings and things over my life that are very traumatizing. We take all of that in, and let your students talk about it. Let them talk about it. Let them talk about it. Make it into something, lean in. I like, the saying, lean into the discomfort so that you can have something real.
And
I've
that's
Go ahead.
no, it's okay.
No, well, I was just going to say, I've had, invitations from former students inviting me to graduations and all of these things, not because, we did that fun lesson. It's because of the relationship. And when you let a child bare their heart, have a conversation about something that they care about, that's one way that you engender that relationship. They know that you, as whoever you are, you care about what they think. And when you express to parents, teachers, whomever, that you care about what they think, they will, that helps build your relationship. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, if we've learned nothing else through this pandemic, relationships are the key.
yes.
Right?
Indeed.
Well, go ahead, Heidi.
We have begun discussing it here, but how the social and emotional learning and social justice connect to mathematics. And I think you've begun to talk about that here. And as you were speaking, it makes me think about, having opportunity to hear and really hear. Yes. And I think sometimes it becomes in the past, experience can be dismissed as, oh, I'm sure it was not the intent or the meaning or versus the actual listening and taking it in and being responsive by listening.
But even acknowledging the feelings about that, right? Because I think sometimes you're right. You say, I'm sure it wasn't meant for that, but it doesn't matter if it was meant for that. The way that person received that is what is important. Yes. So I often am talking to my kids, well, I didn't mean that. Well, I know you didn't mean it, but guess what? That's how it felt to me. And so that's what's important in this situation, is that you made me feel this way. And that's because of what you said.
Now, I have to tell you, my husband and I celebrated our 20th wedding anniversary. And the reason that we've been married so long is we have those conversations. Like, he'll say something, and then I say, okay, but this is what I heard you say. It's not the words he said, but this is what was communicated to me. And that's the way it is with every human interaction. You might say, hey, how you doing? But the tone of how you said it could communicate something different. So, and especially in a classroom, because it's a power dynamic. I can control you because of grades. I can control you so we don't want it to be a situation of control. We want it to be a community of learners and respect, and we're writers. And I always said it. I want my classroom to be like the Harlem Renaissance. We are just a collection of artists and science, musicians. That's who we are. It's not me controlling, everything. And it's okay if it's messy. It's okay. I tell the story one time, the superintendent had come to visit my class, and he was stepping over kids and all. At first you get that like, oh my God. Then I was like, I'm owning it. And this was the last week of school. A lot of teachers were already packed up and stuff, but we were still working. We were doing this science thing. But that's the way it is. It's messy. It's loud. I always had the worst bulletin boards. I don't care. But it was my kids' love. They would come in at recess, peeking in, what are we doing in math, Ms. Lincoln Moore? So that's what you want. And we want our students to tune in to our remote learning and say, excited about what we're going to do. Send them out in the community, go for a walk, and just look at the math, because life is math. I always told them, let's put on your goggles so we can see the math in the world. But there's a lot of ways. We don't have to just assign packets and things like that. Mathematics is everywhere, and we can utilize that in many different ways. I'm going to tell you this one story, because of course my children, I have 2 teenagers, they have to live with me. So we have game night or movie night, and so this was a movie night, but I kind of tricked them, because before we saw the movie, I said, we need to have a lesson on exponential growth, because I want you to understand, when you see graphs and all these things, I want you to understand. And it's like, what? So they're like, oh, bait and switch. Like, we're supposed to be watching the movie. But you know what?
What movie is this?
Exactly. But that's the thing. Martin Luther King said that the function of education is that we create critical thinkers. So mathematics is a tool, a very powerful tool, that we can enable students and adults to think critically. So when you see a graph, that you can really extrapolate all the components of what it is, not just the narrative that's being told to you, and that you could ask questions. And right now in our society, we're being told, don't ask questions, just listen to me. It doesn't matter if facts are, valid or whatever it is. So I think mathematics, especially when you talk about social justice, has been used to hurt so many. We need to empower our students to see the mathematics in the world and how they can make a difference. John Lewis, you see the data. This is happening. So I'm going to do something that's going to make change. And one way was through boycotting. When you stop paying money, people start listening. So, I mean, there's lots of different ways that we can express to students that they have power. Remember, we're human. We want to be heard. So why are there food deserts in my neighborhood? Why is it this? Why is the internet where I live so poor? And what can I do? Let's look at the numbers. There's so many lessons that we could do, especially during this time, that we can look into it and say, let's ask the questions. And then when you start asking questions, then they get motivated to wanting to do something about it.
Oh, Christina, I think that we could sit and listen to your voice and everything you have to say for hours on end. This has been so great. And I want to share with everybody your website. If anybody would like to get in touch with Christina Lincoln Moore, you can go here to talk number to me, and you can find her presentations. There's a beautiful video. I highly recommend reading anything that you can find about her. Yeah, this
good stuff.
yeah, just the good stuff. Don't read the bad stuff. That's not worth it.
It doesn't exist. Only good stuff.
We're so pleased that you could be here with us today.
Thank you.
Every word out of your mouth has been gold. We are all just sitting here waiting to hear what you're going to say. So thank you so much for joining us. And keep doing the good work that you're doing. And honestly, good luck at school next week.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Same to you. I just want to say thank you for having me, and thank you for everyone who's listening. Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you for being here, and we're gonna have a few more things to say before we go. Heidi, you want to?
If you've been listening, if you would like to share in the comments something that you heard that is a takeaway that you're like, yes, that resonated so much with me, if you would share that in the comments, I'm really interested. I know I'm going to have to rewatch this because I was trying to take some notes. So I'm curious if people can share their biggest takeaway from our conversation.
Yeah. Good stuff. Heidi?
Yes. So we have just a reminder or two that if you are interested in continuing this conversation, I know that we will be doing that. Molly put up this week a kind of discussion prompt around some of the ideas that Christina Lincoln Moore was talking about in our Math Together community. And so we're sharing some of those ideas about how we provide opportunities for self-care, and then how do we set that up for our students as well. And if you're an administrator, how we do that for our teachers. So that's a conversation that we're having right now. And you can get there by going to the Looney Math Consulting page and click on the Math Together community. Additionally, just to remind you about the coffee chats, you can sign up there as well. You click on contact us and sign up for one of those, and we would be happy to continue this conversation with you there as well.
Excellent. And last but not least, next week we have Mike Flynn joining us. We have a change of time. It's going to be at 4:30 next week on Thursday, and he's going to be talking about distance learning. So be sure to tune in, and if you can't be here with us live, watch the recording. I'm sure he's going to have a lot of great tips for us. So thanks so much for being with us today. We really appreciate it, and always be curious.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.